So, I mean, just to start off, I know you grew up here in Iowa. Do you want to tell me about kind of your journey growing up here in the state and how you got here today?
So actually, I didn't grow up here in Iowa.
Oh,
I grew
okay.
up in a very small town in Florida, a lot like Iowa small towns. It was a town of 700 people. And I grew up in a mobile home. Both of my parents were really hard workers. My dad was a construction worker. My mom worked part-time in a daycare. Neither of them had graduated high school. I think my dad went to 9th grade, my mom to 7th grade. And they worked really hard, just to put food on the table. I always joke that one of the happiest days of my life was when we got our double wide mobile home, because we literally had twice as much space as we had before. And a lot of people don't know the joy, the magic of growing up in a small town like that, but it was wonderful. I started mowing grass when I was 9, waitressing when I was 14. I joked that we were Ford trucks, Busch beer, Johnny Cash, and a good Friday night was Kentucky Fried Chicken and the Dukes of Hazzard on TV. You're probably too young to remember that, but it was a good life until my dad got sick, and then he had emphysema. He had it for 10 long years, and just as he got really sick, they canceled his health insurance. And when that happened, we lost everything. We couldn't afford the sky-high prescription drugs that it took to keep him alive. And we looked around and we said, wait a minute, we had done everything right. We had worked hard, we had paid our taxes, but we lost everything. And there are a lot of people in Iowa just like that who are working really, really hard. But one bad break, one illness, one accident, one lost job, and it all goes away, And so we need people in Washington, D.C. who know what that's like to work hard and still struggle to put food on the table. And we need to make sure that they can not just get by, but get ahead. And that's why I'm running for Congress.
Absolutely. Now, I'm curious, what brought you out to Iowa?
Yeah, well, the job. I got a position as a professor at the University of Iowa Law School. It was such a great opportunity. It just changed my life, and it has been a great joy to teach young people there about the miracle of our country and our democracy. And so, I've probably taught thousands of Iowa's sons and daughters at this point, and I run into them out on the campaign trail everywhere I see them, out in different parts of the district, and it's so fun to see them and to see them doing well and see their families and everything. And so it's been a real joy and a real opportunity. And, it's also so important to me, education, because, when I was a kid, growing up the way I did and having lost everything that we lost, it was really public education that gave me every opportunity that I have ever had. And this job, has allowed me to kind of pay some of that back, because, I get first generation college students like me all the time in there who are like, wait a minute, my mom was a hairdresser, my dad was a truck driver, like, do I belong here? Can I do this? And I let them know my background, and I say, absolutely you can. And it is such a joy to be able to help people get that start in life. And it's been a real privilege to do that work.
Right, and obviously these life experiences have shaped a lot of your policy positions. Do you want to tell me what are some of those education, benefits? What are the changes you want to make here in Iowa?
Yeah, so I'm really glad you asked that, because public education has always been such a priority and a source of pride in Iowa. Everywhere I go, people remind me, we used to be #1 in public education, and people say it with such nostalgia, and just such a sense of, longing, really, for those days when Iowa was #1 in education. And, the truth is that some politicians here in Iowa have been defunding public education. We've seen this voucher bill that now is giving $1 billion of taxpayer money to private schools and to families to take their kids out of public schools and send them to private schools. And meantime, I'm going around all over the district, and I've been talking to people in small towns and our rural areas, independents, Democrats, and Republicans, who are teachers, parents, principals, school board members, who are devastated by what they're seeing happen to our public schools. I consider myself first and foremost a teacher, in a public institution, and I am absolutely supportive of all of our public school teachers in our public schools. And what I want to do in Congress is to work for national comprehensive investment in our public schools, especially in our small town and rural schools, which I know from having talked to so many people in this district have unique challenges. Representative Miller-Meeks has supported the voucher bill that Kim Reynolds passed. And then when she got to Congress, she actually supported an even bigger one that would be a national private school voucher bill, 10 times bigger than what Kim Reynolds has done here. It would take $11 billion away from our public schools and put it into private schools. She voted for budget cuts that would cut over 100,000 teacher jobs across the country, and would cut 170,000 kids from Head Start, for kids who need it. So, this is exactly the wrong approach, and I'll tell you, it is out of step with Iowans because we are strongly supportive of education. And when I am Congress, I will push to make sure every kid can eat, every kid can learn, and I won't stop until Iowa's #1 in public education again.
That's good to hear. Yeah, and I know recently there's been a bit of kind of turmoil over area education agencies, recently that went into effect, where they've been consolidated and their power has kind of been sent back to the Department of Education. I want to hear your take on that, and I understand it's a state policy, but kind of what would be your reaction to that in Congress?
Well, what I can tell you is that, look, the lines between state and federal are blurred a bit here. Education funding, some of it comes from the federal government, and, there's a lot of power on the part of the state and local governments to do what they want. But listen, as I have talked to people all throughout this district, they are so upset by what they see with their area education agencies cutting funding, especially around special education. There are a lot of kids with special needs. A lot of our rural areas and small schools, they don't have the resources to deal with that and to provide the resources that these special needs kids have. And so, it's really important that we get those resources to people. And this is not a partisan issue. As I said, Democrats, independents, and Republicans are really unhappy about, the cuts to area education agencies and the defunding of our public schools in favor of private schools. And so what I want to do is make sure that when I am in Congress, we can provide those resources to our local schools, and especially with attention to our rural and small town schools that really do have very unique challenges to overcome.
Absolutely, that's in line with a lot of what I've heard about my reporting on the AEA stuff. And I want to go back to something you mentioned about your dad and those healthcare costs and specifically prescription drugs. What are your plans surrounding that?
Yeah. This is near and dear to my heart, because as a family, we really watched what happened when my dad got sick. And so I want to say a couple of things. First, we have to make sure that we protect people who have pre-existing conditions. That's what happened to my dad. He got sick. When he got really sick, they canceled his health insurance because he had lost his old insurance, and then he had a pre-existing condition. He couldn't get new insurance. And so we could not afford his prescription drugs, and we lost everything as a result of that. And the Affordable Care Act fixed that. The Affordable Care Act made it illegal for insurance companies to discriminate against people with pre-existing conditions. But there are Republicans in Congress now, there was just a report on it just a few days ago, people who are still trying to repeal the Affordable Care Act and that protection for people with pre-existing conditions. My opponent, Mariannette Miller-Meeks, she actually was one of the biggest opponents of the Affordable Care Act. She talked about repealing it for years. She opposed it when she ran. And so, she's part of that group who would absolutely vote to repeal the Affordable Care Act if that came up. I will always protect people with pre-existing conditions and make sure that insurance companies can't discriminate against them. The second thing that we need to do is to bring down healthcare costs. I hear this from people all over. And, we have to elect people who will put bringing down costs before the big drug companies. before the big insurance companies. And Mariannette Miller-Meeks has done exactly the opposite. What she has done is taken over $250,000 from the big pharmaceutical companies, and then she voted against letting Medicare negotiate for lower drug prices. I hear people all over this district, they know that set of 10 drugs that are now going to be negotiated for and those costs are going to come down. They know those drugs by name. They need them. And Mariannette Miller-Meeks put her pharmaceutical big drug donors ahead of the people of Iowa and voted against letting Medicare negotiate to bring those costs down. She also took money from a group of insulin manufacturers on the exact same day that she voted against capping the price of insulin for our seniors. That is not about left and right politics. That is just wrong. We have to put our own people, the people that we represent, we have to put them and their needs and life-saving drugs for them ahead of special interest donors and the big pharmaceutical industry. So that is what I will fight for. I've lived it. I know what it's like. It's in my blood. And when I am in Congress, I will put lowering healthcare costs for the people of this district first.
Right. And I will say I did look at the Miller-Meeks voting record. She did vote yes on a specific bill that would only cap insulin. I believe that other vote was for a larger bill. Was that the Inflation Reduction Act that she voted against, right? She did vote specifically for price caps on insulin, but that was all that bill would do.
Yeah. Here's the thing. This is what we see with Mariannette Miller-Meeks over and over and over. She will vote no on a bill that could actually pass. A bill that we know would make huge improvements in people's lives. And then, because it's election time and because she knows that that's an unpopular vote, she will put her name on a bill that is a fake bill. It's going nowhere. It does nothing. But she will put her name on that so that she can say that she did that. She can say that she supported that. But when she had the opportunity to vote on the bill that would actually pass, that would actually change people's lives, she voted no. And I'm going to tell you that she's done this on so many different things, okay? So she's done it on immigration when she voted against the strict border bill that came up that was a golden opportunity to finally secure the border, stop fentanyl trafficking. She voted no. They didn't even bring it up to a vote. They wouldn't even bring it to a vote. So, she wouldn't do that. But she's out there saying she wants to secure the border all the time. She voted no on a bipartisan infrastructure bill that's fixing roads and bridges, locks and dams all over the area, especially here in the Quad Cities. And then she goes to ribbon cuttings and groundbreaking ceremonies to smile for the camera, to act like she supported projects that she voted against. Healthcare is another area, like you just said, on the drug prices. She's out there talking about, I supported this bill or that one. Those were all bills that she knew had no chance of passing. She puts her name on it so she can check that box and say, yes, I supported that. When actually the bill that's now making a difference in people's lives, she refused to support. And we see that kind of saying one thing and doing another over and over and over. And I can tell you that the people of Iowa are smarter than that. And they know that she's not working for them.
All right. Well, I wanted to, one thing you mentioned there is immigration. And obviously that's been a hot topic. It even came up again last night when J.D. Vance pushed against the moderators doing fact check on the legal status of those Haitian immigrants. Now, my question for you is, how does immigration impact us here in Iowa, landlocked, pretty far from the U.S.-Mexico border?
Yeah, look, everybody in the country, whether you're in Iowa or on the border or anywhere else, people don't want chaos at the border. People care about our national security, and people want to know that there's security there, that things are being done in an orderly, lawful way, and that there aren't lots of people just coming across illegally, with no laws governing them. I think that that's what people care about, and we have to secure the border. Every country in the world, civilized country in the world, secures its border. We are no different. We have to do that, and we absolutely have to stop the fentanyl trafficking. That is an issue. It is affecting our communities. It's killing our kids. Like, we have to get a hold on that. Here's the thing, though, and this is just an example that as I mentioned a minute ago. There is a lot of talk about the need to secure the border from politicians like Mariannette Miller-Meeks. She talks about it all the time. When she had the chance to actually secure the border, the golden opportunity to pass the strictest border bill that this country has ever seen, the border bill that Border Patrol agents wanted, supported, and endorsed. They said, this is what we need to secure the border and to keep fentanyl from coming into the United States. When Representative Miller-Meeks had the chance to pass that bill, she and her Republican caucus in the House refused to even bring it to a vote. That's a fact. And the reason? Because they wanted to keep campaigning on it. They didn't want to solve the problem. They wanted to keep using the problem as a campaign issue. If there has ever been an example of putting politics ahead of our own national security, if there's a better example than this, I don't know what it is. We have to stop doing that. And I will tell you that when I am in Congress, I will never, ever put political games ahead of our national security and securing the border or keeping our communities safe.
Right. And, another kind of big difference between you and Miller-Meeks are stances on abortion. And, I understand the law went into effect not too long ago, and especially here in the Quad Cities, you have to drive a really long time to get access to abortion. What are your plans when it comes to abortion?
Yeah. Iowa now has one of the strictest bans in the country. It is a 6-week ban that bans abortion before most women know that they are even pregnant. And Representative Miller-Meeks supported that ban when she ran for the Iowa Senate. In fact, Kim Reynolds endorsed her largely because she said that Miller-Meeks was a champion for this 6-week ban. Those were her words, not mine. Then, though, when Representative Miller-Meeks got to Congress, she actually went even further than that, because she co-sponsored a life at conception bill. That's the name of the bill, a life at conception bill, that would ban all abortions across the entire country with no exceptions at all, not for rape, incest, or to save a woman's life. And that same bill would actually ban IVF fertility treatments, in vitro fertilization treatments, that women use when they desperately want a child but can't have one on their own. I actually used IVF to have a second child, and this is very personal to me because she would literally have deprived women all over this country of the ability to have a child, which they desperately want. So she has just gone way to the extreme. And I know that abortion is a difficult issue. People will always have strong feelings about this. It's not easy for me, it's not easy for anyone to talk about, but Representative Miller-Meeks has gone so far to the extreme and has really gone far out of step with what everyday Iowans believe. 2/3 of people in Iowa disagree with the 6-week ban, and an even larger number disagree with her life at conception bill that she signed on to in Congress. She is drastically out of step with Iowans and Iowa women especially on this issue. So when I am in Congress, what I will work for is to put Roe versus Wade back into federal law, where it was for half a century. It strikes a balance, and I think that it's what people knew and were comfortable with. I know not everybody supported it, but the overwhelming majority of Iowans and Americans support Roe versus Wade. I would work to put that back into federal law where it belongs.
Right, and obviously you can't, there's the checks and balances, the Supreme Court and the legislation. Would you plan to do that through legislation?
Yeah, I would. Look, you know, whether the Supreme Court says it or Congress says it, either way, it's federal law. When Roe versus Wade was protected in the Supreme Court before the Dobbs decision overruled it, that was federal law. And if we pass a law in Congress and the president signs it into law and essentially puts the law of Roe versus Wade into a federal statute, then we would have the same law again. And I think that's what we ought to do. I think people really kind of want to just go back to before all of this started, back to before the Supreme Court overruled Roe versus Wade and basically eliminated a fundamental constitutional right for the first time in our memory. I teach constitutional law, and I can tell you, like, I don't remember another time that the Supreme Court took away a fundamental constitutional right that it had recognized. And that's what it did with Roe versus Wade. And the consequences have been devastating. Women in many, many states now are living with a complete or very drastic abortion ban, including now here in Iowa. And there are women who have ectopic pregnancies who need this procedure. And, you know, people who would die if they didn't get this procedure, and the pregnancy isn't viable anymore. But doctors are going to be there wondering whether they can perform this procedure at risk of losing their license. You know, women are going to be in parking lots bleeding out or having septic infections, and the doctor will say, wait to come in until you have a super high fever and are this close to death's doorstep, right? Before we can provide this. And that's the current law that we now have in Iowa. So I think that's wrong. I think that women should have control of their own bodies. I think Roe versus Wade was a balanced law, and I want to put it back into federal law.
Right. And let me see. So this is a very close race.
Yeah.
We both know that.
Yes.
And
6 votes in 2020 is what this came down to. So I hope it's not quite that close, but yes, we do expect it to be a close race.
Right. And, you know, there's been a lot of money and ads going into this race. And it's one of very few that the Democratic Party nationally thinks that it can flip. I mean, do you feel that pressure running this campaign?
It's a great opportunity, you know, and what I'm so excited about here is just the energy that we are seeing here. The reason that, you know, the polling and everything, it shows us so close is because the level of grassroots organizing that we have been doing has been incredible. You know, we have hundreds of volunteers across this entire district knocking tens of thousands of doors. We are getting back to that grassroots organizing that we have seen in Iowa for a long time around the caucuses and all that. It's really exciting. People are ready to turn the page on a politics that is so obsessed with the left and the right that we have forgotten about right and wrong. That is what has happened in our Congress. And as a result, people have lost faith in our government. You know, a lot of people in Iowa feel like political outsiders. You know, they feel like they don't understand what politicians are doing. You know, they have to work together in their everyday lives, and you know, but people get to Congress, and it's like the Bermuda Triangle of common sense over there. You know, it just disappears, and people don't know how to work together anymore. It's all about trying to, you know, point fingers and try to make the other side look bad more than it is about trying to do things for people. You know, and so what people are seeing in my campaign is a different kind of politics. We are turning the page on that. And you know, for me, like, I don't care whether somebody's in my same party or not. I don't care even whether they vote for me. Well, I care. I would like for them to vote for me. But you know, if they don't vote for me, I will still represent them because that is the job. It's a constitutional responsibility in this country. And so one of the first things I will do after elected is to really reach out to all of those people who I think probably didn't vote for me so that I can talk to them and see how I can serve them in Congress as well. This is a message that is resonating with people. And all throughout this district, people are putting out yard signs when they never have. They are knocking doors when they never have. They're getting engaged in political campaigns, even though they've maybe never been political before. And that's what's so exciting to me about the energy that we're seeing in this. And it probably will be a very close race, but I think we're going to be successful in the end.
All right, well, Christina Bohannan, thank you so much for joining us here tonight.
Yeah.
I really appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you so much.
Great, thank you.